Hey, what's up, gamers? It's your boy, Church of Caboose, and welcome back to my channel. This video, I thought I'd just give some tips for the duality dungeon, specifically for the boss fight with Caiatl. I was doing this with some friends of mine. There were a couple of things that kind of came up as we were doing it, and they're like, "What? That's a thing? No way!" And I was like, maybe I should make a video just to kind of share these with more people. So if you find this video helpful, make sure you click the like button, as well as subscribe to my channel. I would also love it if you guys would comment your own tips down below of things you found to be pretty helpful, and anything that you think that I suggested was helpful, like let me know down below. That would be fantastic. All right, let's get into this. Okay, so a good place to start off with some tips, especially if you're new to this dungeon, is going to be some character suggestions. I highly suggest you guys run on Titan. Specifically, make sure you're using those bonk hammers. If you put on Lorelei Splendor, the Titan exotic helm, which if you don't have it, can be acquired by farming solo legend lost sectors when the reward is exotic helmets for that day. If you have that helmet on when you're doing those bonk hammers, anytime you get absoluted, so your health goes to the red bar, you drop a little sunspot and healing starts to begin. If you have your little hammer set up where throwing them gives you radiance as well as your allies, and then if you have on roaring flames, you will be able to heal yourself just by throwing your hammer at an enemy and picking it up, which works out really well. And then that hammer creates little sunspots, and that does lots of damage, killing out ads. You're getting health back, and you get your hammer back. It's just basically an infinite way of doing ad clear that is really, really efficient, as well as making yourself have health regen happen and your allies. And if you throw on classy restoration, every time you get absoluted by the enemies and your Lorelei procs as your barrier gets used, well, then you get even more health regen, but it's not necessarily required. If you put on the Rally Barricade, you get your ability back even faster, because the Rally Barricade does not take as much time to charge up, and so you pretty much have infinite Lorelei abilities to be activated by the time your healing stuff runs out, and you gotta kind of refresh it. But if you're using the hammers constantly, then you're able to not have to really worry about that anyways. All right, the last thing with the Titan is I would suggest changing your controller layout. Go to the layout in the menu, go to settings, then go to button layout, right? And then click on custom. And you can scroll down and you can just map having a charged melee to whatever button, and then auto melee, that kind of, like, just have it set up, and you can just mess around with it too as you're figuring out and like linking it all up. And if you do it right, you can set it up where you can always throw your hammer no matter how close the enemies are, assuming that you have a hammer charged up, as well as be able to punch if you don't have a charged melee, because sometimes if you're like me, you might throw the hammer off the edge of the map, and it happens. That's okay. All right, you still want to punch things because Titan smash. All right, so that's some tips for one character. If you want to do it on Hunter, I personally really like doing the Omni Oculus with my Hunter, so I can go invis, I can grab the standards. I usually, especially if I'm doing Hunter, will be like, hey, I don't mind, I can grab both the standards when we're getting ready for boss damage, which I'll explain more on that later. I can just go invis to get away from enemies, and since it's Omni Oculus, you get some damage resist while you're invis, and you get an extra smoke bomb thing, which means if you slam it or throw it on your allies, you will get a smoke bomb back for being able to keep on having that invisibility as an option. All right, so if you're doing this with ads, you can do dodge, or excuse me, you don't want to do dodge first, because dodge, if you do gambler's dodge, you can make it where you get a smoke charge back. So you can do a little slam to the ground, use a smoke charge, you can dodge then, and you'll get that charge back. And so you'll be able to have 4 ways of making yourself invisible without having an ally near you, and when you're running around doing those standards. All right, and then if you're on Warlock, Starfire Protocol is probably the best way to go. Do those fusion grenades, you get extra fusion grenades, and run well. And of course, classy restoration, because it is a solar class mod, and since well is solar, that's going to help you out with Titan. Whereas Hunter, my suggestion of Omni Oculus, you don't get to use classy restoration, but you totally can if you want to run on solar. All right, so those are some character suggestions. Now let's go ahead and just actually talk about the main point of this video, which is the tips for the actual encounter. And those are going to be mostly focused on the boss fight, or the part leading right up to the boss fight. So let's get on into that. All right, for the actual boss fight, we're going to have a handful of tips here. Okay, so I want to kind of assume a little bit you know what this encounter is. As I'm reading this off, I'm going to try to kind of explain it sort of briefly as we go. If you already know how it works, then this will probably make more sense to you. All right, so in order to activate the damage phase, you have to get 4 standards planted in order to ring the big giant conquest bell. You can kind of see there on the screen up in the middle, it's got that ram up against it. When you put those 4 standards into the pillars, that big pillar thing rears back, and then you have to shoot the chains in order to ring the bell. Once that big conquest bell is rung, then you are going to get pulled after a few seconds into the nightmare realm to do damage to Caiatl. Now, for you to do damage to Caiatl in that realm, you have to kill bell keepers. There's 2 per bell, not just a total of 4. There's a total of 6 now for the damage phase. What's going to happen is Caiatl is going to pick a random bell and bum rush it. All right, and if you don't have the bell keepers down for that bell, she will. If she touches the bell, then the damage phase is over. It's not a wipe. She just goes back to the regular realm, and you guys have to do the 4 standards over again. But a couple of easy ways to prevent that from happening is, the first one is you want to all be spread out, right? You want to have, as you're getting ready to ring the bell, you want to have 1 guardian on the left side, 1 on the middle, and 1 on the right. 1 by each of those bells, because that's where the bell keepers will spawn. So if as soon as you spawn in, then you use your hammer, Cartesian coordinate, whatever it is, and kill those guys really quick. The other thing you can do to help make it where you have more time and do more damage is whatever side she is running to, that person should rush at Caiatl, because when they get close to her, she will stomp, which means you have more time for your allies to get to your bell. Because if all of you guys are in that ring, when you ring the bell, you do ridiculously more damage. You do normal damage. If you're outside of the bell when it gets rung, then you do almost no damage at all. Like, it's like, I think a hand cannon shot was like 500 hit points or something like that. So you want to make sure you're all in the bell if possible. However, it is way better just to ring that bell and prevent her from doing a damage phase, and to buy you guys some time to have some massive damage on the next 2 bells than it is just to lose that phase completely. So if need be, just as yourself, just shoot the bell if you have to in order to prevent her from wiping you. Alright, but if you run at Caiatl, she will rear up and stomp, and that will buy time. And you can do that over and over, especially if you're on Titan with Lorelei, because your sunspots will activate and they'll help heal you, and that will just buy you a lot of time. For actual damage itself, there's a couple of weapons that work better than others. Surprise, surprise, all right? So swords are pretty much the go-to, as well as linear fusion rifles. I personally think linear fusion rifles are better because swords assume that you have the way to heal yourself. So like Titan swords work just fine, or doing a well, if you have a well on the boss when you're doing the sword damage, that works well too. But we were finding if we're like on Hunter and we don't really have any wells active and there's not a Titan making anyone radiant or anything like that, then it was a lot harder to stay alive, and linears are definitely way better. And in general, linear fusion rifles and swords are pretty much on par with each other as far as damage goes. Now, for rolls you want on swords, something like a fallen guillotine with relentless strikes and whirlwind blade will be fantastic, because relentless strikes, as I guess it could go on any sword really, will give you ammo back as you land hits. You don't have to kill the boss to get those rounds refunded. You only have to be doing damage. So as you're swiping, you get ammo back, which means you get more, sword ammo to do more damage. For linear fusion rifles, you want to have something like triple tap firing line, triple tap vorpal, rapid hit vorpal, rapid hit firing line, that kind of thing. The new linear fusion rifle, the Storm Chaser, is by far the best linear fusion rifle. Probably the next best option would be a Reed's Regret, which is the Trials of Osiris linear fusion rifle that has triple tap vorpal or triple tap firing line, and those will all work for you as well. Alright, then the last thing I want to give to you guys is just to be aware this might take a little bit of time. All of this stuff is based around the damage phase, and I really hope this video gives you guys some ideas. None of my teammates knew anything about running at the boss to getting her stomp. They didn't know anything about maybe shooting the bell, so that way you get pulled into the realm sooner, so you got more time to kill those bell keepers. And nor did they know that in order to do more damage, you gotta be in that circle when you ring in the bell during the damage phase. If you're not in it, you do almost no damage, and that is why. But you want to also make sure Caiatl is kind of close, if not on top of that circle too, because if you do it too early, she will just sometimes bolt and run to a different bell, and that can be disheartening. And just always remember, it's a dungeon. You get unlimited damage phases, so don't feel like you have to absolutely rush everything, or if you lose a phase that it's over. It's just do it again. And if you have one person doing both the standards, I feel like that's a lot faster than trying to split it up, and that's just my own opinion, but honestly, you can do that however you want. Please let me know down below if this video was at all helpful or useful, or provide any new information to you. Don't forget to like the video as well as subscribe to my channel. I hope you guys all have a fantastic week. Happy farming for that storm chaser. I appreciate you guys all so much. Have a great week and happy grinding, y'all.